You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh, God, the boss has crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times,
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
we will not raw dog reality for that one.
It's going to be wholly unprofessional.
The Scab Buster.
What have we become?
Keep together strong. Let that be your mantra.
Hello, and welcome to the Labor Jaunt podcast, where we ruffle the hair of the working class history of Philadelphia and the surrounding world. My name is Sam James, and I have to be on my best behavior because apparently we're legit now. We're academics, I guess, supposedly. And my co-host is...
I'm Gabe Christie, and I feel very uncomfortable that we started with ruffle the hair of labor history.
And today we are going to ruffle the hair of...
So I wanted to do an episode to honor the Christian holiday of Easter. This is a little-known holiday, and I'll admit I'm a Hebrew, so I don't know a huge amount about it. I know that chocolate is important, so I guess I'll dive in. So
Don't you mean you'll bite it?
Hey!
That didn't
No.
deserve an A.
So, as I'm sure anyone who's...
Or take a bite out of. That works better. Now you can do your A.
Okay. It's too late now.
We can start this whole thing over again. They won't even notice.
It's true. It's the beauty of editing.
That is true.
But we're not going to.
No, because I totally forgot how I started this episode, and I'm not going to think of anything better than that.
Yep.
So the Hershey strike of 1937.
Yeah. So, obviously, it was during the Great Depression in the 1930s.
Oh, God, another Great Depression episode.
Yeah.
These are the episodes that need trigger warnings.
It was a period of a lot of labor activity. Because times were really tough, and a lot of people decided to take it upon themselves to fix that. So first we should talk about the Hershey Corporation and what Hershey, Pennsylvania is, because it's kind of unique.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a fan of great man history where you focus on like one person did all of this amazing stuff, but
But we're about to do that.
Yeah.
We should have done this live at Hershey Park.
We should have, on a roller coaster.
On the, what was it, the Hershey Kiss Tower or something? They got
Oh, yeah. So Milton Hershey is a fellow from Pennsylvania. He first made his fortune at the Lancaster Caramel Company, and he sold that in 1900 because he wanted to find a method of producing milk chocolate in the United States. At the time, there was a very small-scale chocolate industry that was mostly like small artisanal confectioners. There was no large-scale industrial chocolate production.
Oh. He's going to change the game.
Oh, he did. So he made a huge amount of money with the Lancaster Caramel Company.
That's not as a catchy name as like Hershey.
No. Sorry?
You're going to have you're going to eat that Lancaster Caramel Company bar?
I prefer the Intercourse Pennsylvania Caramel Company.
Why couldn't we have done the working class history of Intercourse, Pennsylvania? I work there. I go in and out all the time.
Yeah. So
You didn't think you didn't like make a time slot like 20 minutes of Sam just riffing with horrible jokes about.
I didn't know I was going to mention
brought up
intercourse
intercourse
today. I always think about intercourse whenever you're around, Sam. So
Is this our last episode?
I hope so.
I got to check the show notes.
So basically, between 1900 and 1903, Milton Hershey dedicated himself to like figuring out how to industrialize chocolate production. So he In 1903, he broke ground on his chocolate factory that would eventually become the center of Hershey, Pennsylvania, which was a weirdly utopian company town. Most company towns in the early 1900s were basically like shanty towns and weren't necessarily good places to live.
But they were overflowing with chocolatey goodness.
Yes. So Milton Hershey kind of had this, I guess, late 19th, early 20th century progressive view of we can treat workers slightly nicer and it doesn't have to be awful. So
I told you this man was a visionary.
Yeah.
He has my full backing.
I like it. So when he was designing Hershey, Pennsylvania, he insisted on creating a pleasant community that he was explicit. He didn't want it, to feel like slave quarters. So every house had to be a little bit different. It shouldn't be like a bunch of cookie cutter neighborhoods. There should be some variety everywhere.
How low is the bar that you have to go out of your way to think all right, let's not make this like slave quarters?
Yeah.
That's not a jumping off point.
Yeah. I mean, in the early 20th century for company
housing,
a jumping
off point.
Yeah. But he made sure every house had indoor plumbing, electricity, and modern amenities, which at the time was like running water.
And a fondue fountain.
Yes. Every house has a chocolate pipe that runs straight back to the factory.
Well, that's the indoor plumbing.
Yeah. Oh. He also built a actually fairly robust trolley system that connected Hershey to Elizabethtown and some of the other local cities like Palmyra. And he got the Pennsylvania and Reading Railroad to build a line directly from Hershey to Philadelphia. Or I guess probably to Reading and then Philly, but they had a P&R line to Hershey. He also used that to transport all of the products that they were making in the factory. But,
an ulterior motive?
Yeah. But it did help the community. And even more surprising for the period, workers were also given a variety of benefits, including retirement plans and bonuses. So he built a fairly nice community, but he did expect a 60-hour work week. And
I mean, he did give them toilets.
Yes.
So I mean, man up.
Yeah. And he also made a lot of profits. But he was also the rare kind of industrialist that actually used some of his profits to invest back into the company, and they were able to weather most of the economic downturns between the 1910s and 30s. So they he seemed to be living up to
he seems like a great guy. Why are we doing this episode, Gabe?
Well,
I feel like you're about to slander this man.
It gets different. So
he pulled himself up with his bootstraps and he built this amazing company.
Yeah.
In one of the worst economic times of this country.
Yeah.
And the world. Gabe, continue.
So it did come at a little bit of a cost, because basically Milton Hershey had personal control over every aspect of your life. So
like this man is like the Walt Disney of chocolate.
Yes.
And confectionaries.
That's actually a really good comparison.
Even after his death, he's still pulling strings.
Yeah. So he had say over the schools in the town, what stores were available, libraries, theaters, and the churches. And at least initially, they were all micromanaged by him. Later on, he got his management style loosened.
This is a man whose one of his best-selling products is called Kisses.
Yeah. So then, obviously, the Great Depression hit everybody pretty hard in the 30s. But weirdly, Hershey, Pennsylvania remained a little section of job security. So they didn't actually have big layoffs. They didn't kick everyone off the job. And Milton actually spent $10 million of his own money on quote unquote public works.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Which were stadiums.
You used quotation marks.
Yeah. The public works were stadiums and hotels. So profit-making ventures.
Yeah, those aren't public works.
Yeah. But he called them public works.
Okay.
What ended up happening, though, was by the end of the 30s, the workers in his plants, or some of the workers in his plants, started to look around and realize that, hey, a bunch of these other industrial workers are only working 40 hours a week, and they're starting to get better benefits. And they all just formed a union. So that's interesting. So there were some grumblings.
But they didn't get fondue fountains.
It's true.
What if you saw that on your benefits page?
I mean...
It was a new hire. It's wait, excuse me. I need some clarification.
I'd be interesting to see if they had, chocolate parties rather than pizza parties.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Oh, yeah.
You know those black robe industrialist meetings, behind closed doors? Imagine that, but a bunch of chocolate industrialists. There's a chocolate fountain and they all get naked in and then they just go swim in and they have crazy orgies in it and all that.
Sounds very unsanitary. But I mean...
Hold on, Gabe, I'm not done picturing that. All right, now I'm done.
Okay. Can I continue? The Communist Party of Hershey, Pennsylvania. Which is
this episode took a change.
Yep. That is not a term that I ever thought I would see written, but it existed.
Can you repeat that?
The Communist Party of Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right, no, please continue. This is the greatest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
So they started distributing a series of leaflets, basically highlighting some of the grievances that the workers had against Hershey and his business partner, William F.R. Murray. And Hershey was a fairly hands-off boss at this point.
But Murray was
really well known for micromanaging. He was very proud of the fact that he got to his desk at 8:03 every single day. Those extra 3 minutes were because he waited at the front door of the factory to catch anyone coming into work late.
Oh my... Why? Is he a schoolmaster?
Yeah. So that was who the workers were dealing with at this point, because Milton was in Cuba.
What? What was he doing in Cuba? Probably getting chocolate and all that.
Getting sugar.
Sugar. That's what I said. I said sugar. Jesus. Are we doing a side episode on the sugar plantations that he's getting these sugar from?
We probably should, because
that's
Sugar House Casino. That was named because of the sugar trade, which was pretty big, and had a lot to do with the
But
Sugar
that makes
Islands.
sense, though.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna stick with Hershey on this episode.
No, I'm saying but I mean, it makes sense that the casino would be in the same ballpark as the horrible sugar trade.
Yeah, honestly, I'm sure that their their financial backing came from the same sources.
Probably. The mob and the CIA.
Yeah. So the pamphlets decried them as the big bosses who were taking home large amounts of cash while using basically acting as slave drivers. Which, at least in terms of Milton's dealings in Cuba, is probably not far from the truth in terms of 1930s Cuba.
Yeah, I guess so.
But that's for another episode.
But that's all we'd be thinking about.
Yeah. So I will, however, say that I have not found any evidence that there was like that kind of an internationalist critique of him. It was the pamphlets that the Communist Party were handing out were very focused just on the chocolate factory in Hershey. Just so that there's no confusion.
Smart move, yes.
Yeah. I don't think that a bunch of workers in central Pennsylvania in the 30s were going to care too much about
a bunch of people in Central America.
Yeah. Weren't there yet. I'm sure there were some, but...
Oh, we'll get there with Cuba. Don't worry about that.
Oh, yeah. So in January of 1937, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, or the CIO, held a secret meeting of Hershey chocolate workers in Palmyra. And then later that month, their organizing committee issued a demand for a 10% raise in wages. F.R. Murray countered that with a 5% increase. And he did that without Hershey's knowledge or consent.
Okay.
Because Hershey was still in Cuba, negotiating sugar imports. So the other side effect of Hershey being out of the country was that he was totally unaware that there had been like this attitude shift among the workers in his factory. So he still thought that everybody loved him. And
Hershey.
That was not necessarily the case. Murray countered with that 5% increase. Then the union did not like that. So at 11 a.m. on April 2nd, 1937, a fellow by the name of Russell Bull Bayman, who was the local president of the CIO union at the Hershey plant, signaled that the strike was on by walking outside of the factory and waving a red bandana. So immediately, the workers started shutting down the machines, and somewhere between 400 and 1,200 workers sat down at the machines.
Okay.
There's the company line is 400. The CIO line was 1,200.
Okay.
Probably somewhere.
Yeah, let's just go somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. So like X number of workers sat down at their stations. I pulled most of this information from two separate sources that it never contradicted each other, but one was very pro-Hershey and one was very anti-Hershey.
I appreciate that, Gabe.
It was very interesting.
There's not a lot of people who do that, you know, that they take both sides.
It's fair and balanced.
Yes.
The workers that were still loyal to Hershey were allowed to go home during the noon lunch break. So they weren't allowed to come back to work, but they were allowed to go home.
Okay.
So the CIO workers barricaded all of the entrances and fortified themselves inside and declared it a sit-down strike. They then immediately set to work setting up a union kitchen and set up a series of shifts.
It's just all chocolate that they're just going to have a bunch of union men just coming out of that strike looking like Augustus Gloop.
Yeah. It's actually... I didn't find any evidence of them like taking chocolate and eating it during the strike, but I'm sure they must have.
They know what goes in it.
Yeah.
That's
true.
You don't get high on your own supply.
It's true. So they also set up basically a bunch of scheduling systems to manage all the shifts for the picket lines and had ways to get people in and out of the factory and whatnot.
Speaking of Augustus Gloop, can we just touch on the fact that Willy Wonka literally had a slave factory
Yeah.
with the Oompa Loompas?
It's a problem.
Yeah. No, he went to a different, plane of existence. I don't know where they came from. And he literally stole these little people.
Yeah.
And then made them sing songs while they abducted children.
It's a really dystopian novel and movie. And, yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know of any Oompa Loompa equivalent to the CIO. So
Willy Wonka comes back from Cuba. He's like, "Why do you hate me, guys?
Yeah.
Why are you singing songs about me?"
there's no safety railings over the chocolate river. There were a lot of safety violations.
The fact that you watch that and then you're like, OSHA regulation 372, OSHA violation.
That's what you do. So yes, basically Milton Hershey and Willy Wonka are the same person.
Mm-hmm.
The strikers were basically the Oompa Loompas. They did sing a song. I
don't know if you're being facetious or not.
No, they did. It was sung to the tune of Old Gray Mare. It was Old Mr. Murray Ain't What He Used to Be. And apparently they were singing that as loudly as they could, at least on the first day of the strike. So it wasn't like an Oompa Loompa chant, but it was close enough.
What do you get when your boss is Murray?
Just freestyling.
People are not listening for side tangents about Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory.
I think that's exactly what they're listening for. So I should also point out that the strike was only actually supported by a minority of the workers. And even if it was the 1,200 that the CIO claimed, that was 1,200 out of about a 3,000 person workforce.
Okay. And that still could have been 400. So.
Yeah. So there were a lot of workers who still held Hershey up as this model capitalist. And they protested against the strikers, claiming that Hershey was still an example of a benevolent employer.
Okay.
And Hershey, like I had said, Hershey was totally unaware that there had been any sentiment against him. So when he found out about the strike, he was pretty distraught. Surprisingly, to his credit, he ordered his lawyers to start negotiating with the strikers, but avoided making any comments about it publicly. It also seems like his lawyers told F.R. Murray that they can't negotiate with the strikers until the strike ends. Or because he was saying that they're illegally trespassing, so you can't negotiate with them until they stop trespassing.
My brain's trying to think right now. I'm wait, what does any of that mean?
Yeah.
You can't negotiate an end of the strike until the strike is negotiated?
Yeah.
At the end? What is happening right now?
I mean, I also wouldn't be surprised if that was the argument that they somehow made just to prevent any negotiations from happening. So there was some resistance to the strikers, and then it also got bad because the local farming community basically totally relied on the Hershey plant to sell their dairy.
Ah, okay.
Because for the past 30-ish years, Hershey had been such a huge customer for all of them.
I feel like he touched on every facet of life with a 100-mile radius of this place.
Yeah, just about. Basically you had a bunch of dairy farmers whose entire livelihood was based around selling milk just to Hershey. And then all of that during the Great Depression too, so all of their savings were gone and times were tough. So the strikers on the April 5th invited the farmers to negotiate milk sales, and agreed to open up the dairy processing plant so that they could at least sell their milk. So basically, they bring the milk in to pasteurize it and then sell it on the market.
Okay.
Because that was the other thing, that most of these were a bunch of like independent dairies, so they had the ability to milk the cows, but they didn't have large scale pasteurizers.
Okay.
So the next morning, the farmers were supposed to have their milk picked up by Hershey's trucks, but the trucks never showed up.
Okay.
And so that I wasn't able to find any evidence that that was a deliberate move by the company.
Yeah.
But it would,
sounds like a deliberate move by the company.
Yeah.
To garner support for the company.
Yeah.
And
I would say it would not be in the company's interests to lose the support of the farming community.
Yeah.
So listeners can take that statement as they will.
Fair and balanced.
Fair and balanced. The pro Hershey piece that I was reading didn't even mention that the strikers negotiated with the farmers. They just left that out. So then on the 6th, 8,000 loyalists, and so people loyal to Hershey, marched through
Hershey loyalists. Oh my God.
Marched through Palmyra to show support for the company and basically scare the strikers. Whoops.
And while you're opening that beer, Gabe, let me take a minute to thank our sponsor, Hershey Chocolate. Give your missus a kisses.
There you go.
Hershey Chocolate.
Okay. So those 8,000 loyalists were a mixture of other Hershey workers, local dairy farmers, and then basically a bunch of conservatives from the surrounding town that didn't like strikers or communists. So the usual people that come out to strike break.
Yes, the conservatives from the surrounding towns.
I will also say the CIO had some missteps, mainly in a central Pennsylvania town that had a lot of World War I veterans.
Oh, Jesus.
They lowered the national flag and raised the CIO flag, which pissed a lot of people off.
Okay.
Or they actually put the CIO flag above the American flag.
Ooh, CIO, know your audience.
Yeah.
Come on.
So that pissed a lot of people off.
I'm still on Hershey's side, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oof. But I will say that was a misstep. It does not justify what happened on April 7th.
Oh, God.
So the loyalists, not even the Hershey Company.
Today's April 7th.
Oh.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah. So the pro Hershey workers, not the Hershey Company nor the police, issued an ultimatum to the strikers.
Okay.
Saying that you have to leave by noon or you would face violence.
Oh my God.
Then at 1 p.m., 3,000 farmers, World War I veterans, and loyal workers stormed the plant armed with baseball bats, clubs, axe handles, ice picks, and lead pipes.
Jesus Christ.
So the strikers initially tried to take refuge by running deeper into the factory and hiding in some of the locker rooms. But even though they were trying to keep the doors closed and whatnot, most of them ended up getting pulled out and dragged out of the factory. Then others were like jumping out of the first floor windows to get out.
My God.
But the entire building was surrounded, so they basically jumped out into an angry mob that was still trying to kill them.
Halfway down, you're like, fuck.
Yeah. then the lead organizers were dragged out of the building and beaten unconscious in the middle of the street.
I shouldn't be laughing with this, but the visuals is just amazing.
Yeah, and all of this in a freaking chocolate factory, which
That's why I'm laughing. I'm picturing Oompa Loompas just beating the shit out of each other.
yeah. So
Pro Wonka Oompa Loompas against the anti Wonka Oompa Loompas.
yeah, and so luckily no one was killed, which is good. But there were a lot of wounded and bloodied strikers. So the sit-down strike did ultimately fail because its goal was organizing the workers under the CIO.
Yeah.
But there's a silver lining to this very dark cloud. And actually weirdly ties into like the small electoral victories that workers were able to make in the 30s. Actually, the really big electoral victories, I should say. So the National Labor Relations Board, which was barely 2 years old at this point, they were created by the National Labor Relations Act in 1935, and it was their job, or it is their job, to negotiate situations like this to ensure that union elections can go forward smoothly and hopefully without bloodshed, which they were slightly late to the game on.
Yeah, right.
But anyway,
there hasn't been a labor action we've talked about that has not had just people just bloodied.
Yeah. So they informed the Hershey Company that they had to allow their workers to have an election.
Okay.
So the first election ended in a victory for a company union called the Chocolate Workers of Hershey.
Okay.
But the NLRB continued their investigation and determined that there was probably some election tampering. So they ordered another election, and that time the AFL-affiliated Baker and Confectionery Workers International Union won, and they immediately began bargaining for a contract. So they did end up with a union. It wasn't the one that they had initially anticipated.
Okay.
But they got a contract with better wages, paid vacations, and a process for arbitrating grievances.
Not bad.
And there's probably going to be a lot of grievances, considering half of the factory had just beaten the shit out of the other half. So there's probably going to be a little bit of that.
It's going to be a little awkward in the break room.
Yeah. But the real lasting impact of it is that the strike kind of broke that model community vibe that Hershey had created. And you didn't see that kind of, or you didn't see people trying that as much after the 30s. Because that idea had just kind of gone out of fashion, but it was also like people had kind of caught wise to it.
Yeah.
That eventually they're just going to end up exploiting you.
Poor Hershey. Man goes away for 5 minutes to Cuba, comes back. His house is on fire. I feel bad for the guy, actually.
He did actually, I think he was watching the strike from, because he had built a mansion basically in the center of the town. And then he donated it to the town as a country club. That
does not make any of that better.
Yeah. But he was apparently watching the whole strike unfold from the mansion.
Oh, really?
Because he came back from Cuba as quickly as he could. When he found out that, like, oh, I should probably be present for this. So that was the 1937 Hershey strike. So
Oompa loompa loompa doo.
Next time you go to Hershey Park, I hope that's all you can think about. Actually, I didn't check when Easter 1937 was. Because that...
You can do it right now.
I'm going to do it right now. Okay. So the strike ended 10 days before Easter. So...
Okay.
That was... I'm sure if it had started to affect Easter sales, then the police would have been called.
You can't mess with the chocolate bunnies and the chocolate crucifixes, because that's what Easter's about.
It's true.
Because Jesus, while he was on the cross, I have a feeling that if I get the last part of this joke out, we will no longer be allowed to be a podcast. So I'm going to say Happy Easter, everybody. But you can say it because you're a heathen.
I am a heathen. Proudly so. I don't know.
Either you were the same religion as the guy who we all... Fuck it.
Yep. I just like to say...
Life is confusing.
I don't like the sequels. So that's how I explain it.
Oh, I peeked at the end, Gabe. The devil did it.
Damn it.
Spoiler alert.
Hey, this is Gabe, and thanks for listening to the Labor John podcast. So for now, we live in a system called capitalism. And under this system, you have to exchange currency for goods and or services. And to that end, Sam and I put a lot of time, effort, and a fair chunk of our own money into keeping this podcast available and generally free. And if you'd like to help support us doing that, you can give us some money at patreon.com/LaborJohn. And if you choose to do so, we'll give you a fancy button every year, some cool merch, and an extra episode once a month, whenever possible, because life is hard, because capitalism. Anyway, we'd really appreciate your support if you've got a few bucks to spare. Also, if you happen to be a member of a union, and you want your fellow union members to learn about local labor history, we do commission work, like presentations, pamphlets, that kind of stuff. So if that sounds cool, you can shoot us an email at laborjohn@gmail.com or contact us through laborjohn.com or message us on social media or whatever's most convenient for you. But if that sounds interesting, feel free to reach out. And anyway, thanks for listening. Solidarity. Have fun.